What if I told you Spain was a multi-ethnic, multicultural mixing pot before they even left? This is the multi-ethnic history of Spain. People in the Iberian were building megalithic structures that mirrored those of the Mississippi Valley. These people were also found with canoes, possibly pointing to links back to the Americas, since we're the ones who created the canoe. This is one of the oldest faces found in Spain. Then came the Iberian Celtics that ruled from 1200 BC. The Phoenicians, the Greeks, and the Carthaginians came around 800 to 200 BCE and established trading posts in places like Catalonia and Valencia. Then it became Roman Hispania, which built aqueducts and theaters and also introduced Africans like Berbers and Sub-Saharan soldiers that served in the Roman legions of Iberia. Carthaginians bought North African influences centuries before colonialization. During 400 to 711 CE was the Visigoths and the early Christian kings that bought on Rome's collapse in the Dark Ages. Around 700 CE to 1492, the Iberian was ruled by the Moors.
708 AD, the Arab armies had invaded and advanced across North Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. All of Morocco was subdued except Ceuta, which was opposite Spain, separated by the Straits, a distance of only 9 miles. An African chief, a convert to Islam during the Arab invasion of Morocco, was a great general named Tariq. He was given the rank of general in the Arab armies and the governorship of Mauritania by Musa ibn Nusayr, the Arab governor of North Africa. Tariq had befriended Count Julian, governor of Ceuta, and discovered that he wanted revenge against his master, Roderick, for dishonoring his daughter. Thus urged to invade Spain, Tariq then informed Musa of his intention to cross the straits to explore the possibilities for an invasion. In 710, a small army under General Tariq, composed of 400 men and 100 horses, invaded Spain, plundered the town of Algeciras, as well as neighboring towns, and returned to Africa, their boats laden with spoils. With this event, one of the most important, productive, and progressive epochs of world history began and would continue for nearly 800 years. Through this empire of the Moors, the foundations for many institutions of modern Europe were laid. Further, the way for the explorations of the Spaniards and Portuguese that led to the finds in the New World and Africa was prepared during the time of the Moors in Al-Andalus, as their empire in Europe came to be known. Historian Stanley Lane Poole states in The Story of the Moors in Spain, on April 30th, 711 AD, encouraged by the success of Tariq's invasion, Tariq led an army of 7,000 men, of which 6,700 were native Africans, Moors, and 300 were Arabs.
After the Moorish invasion, Tariq and the other North Africans bought a wave and genetic pools from North Africa and the Middle East all over again. You can see the diversity of the faces in cities like Cordoba, Seville, and Granada became the centers of science, pottery, and architecture. The Moors brought irrigation, mathematics, medicine, and left enduring monuments at Alhambra and Colobras Mosque. The Moors were the medieval source for the implied dark skin or a prominent African presence. But the Iberian Peninsula was a thriving multicultural space, and with their presence, they brought on more racial mixing, as you can see in this depiction, creating the current population of Spanish and Portuguese. They were expelled 1492 and brought in the Christian unification of Iberia via Queen Isabella.
Great regard for human rights. Racial and religious tolerance existed to the complete benefit of the empire. Scholar Jan Carew writes, during their long tenure as ruler, the Moors had set a pattern of peaceful symbiosis in their tolerant treatment of Christians and Jews. For centuries, Muslims, Christians, and Jews had lived side by side, and in many instances had so intermarried that numerous families were part Muslim, part Christian, and part Jew. The teachings of the Prophet, too, had stressed repeatedly that peoples of all races and colors were equal in the sight of Allah, and these teachings were not only preached, but often practiced. Women were not discriminated against and enjoyed an active and important place in the society. Flora Shaw points out, "It is interesting to note that in the days of Mohammedan Spain, Moorish women were not confined, as in the East, to harems, but appeared freely in public and took their share in all the intellectual, literary, and even scientific movements of the day. There were women poets, historians, and philosophers, as well as women surgeons and doctors." It was this attitude of tolerance for which the Moors became most renowned. This allowed for the spread of knowledge and the growth of African, European, and Jewish scholars such as Maimonides and Prince Henry the Navigator. These scholars made significant contributions and are remembered today. And finally, quoting Edward Scobie, "Racial mixing in Portugal, as in Spain and elsewhere in Europe, which came under the influence of the Moors, took place on a large scale. That is why historians claim that Portugal is in reality a Negroid land, and that when Napoleon explained that Africa begins at the Pyrenees, he meant every word that he uttered." Beginning with Tariq, the stories of the Moors abound with heroes and their legends.
The Romani, or the Cigano or Gitana of Spain, brought in major influences to the gene pool and to spirituality with the introduction of Santa Sarah Kali, which is based off of Saraswati and Kali. They arrived from northern India, and through their migrations either from North Africa or Europe, their influences have a huge influences on the people of Spain today. They introduced things like the guitar, flamenco, and step dancing into the Iberian. Influences on Black American culture, like jumping the broom, come from the Romani, who were deported to the Americas during the Christian reconquista of the Iberian Peninsula. Baby hairs, which are from the Romani, have found its way into American and Latin culture in the Americas. After the Christian unification, the Spaniards showed up to the Canary Islands and added another diversity to the gene pool from the Guanches, who claimed to have their origins from the West America, and added into the diversity of the gene pool yet again. With the arrival of these mixed race soldiers into the Americas, they took indigenous women and created the redemption of Ham, which is this painting, Mejor la Raza. They created a wider and a wider populations of generations of mixing with lighter people. Lighter skin had more mobility via the Spanish and Portuguese caste system that they put in place in the colony. Latino is a mixing pot, and there's so much diversity within our cultures in America because of all these different influences that took place prior to our existence. Latino has no color. It comes in every color because of this diverse fabric that started before we even got to the America. Iberian does not mean white. It does not mean Spanish or Portuguese. It means a melting pot of people. A lot of people need to unpack their colorism and their texturism before coming on to other people's spaces and telling them who they are. Being from the Latin Americas is an intricate mix of culture that we need to acknowledge. Can't assume somebody's origin because of their dark skin. A lot of dark-skinned people are indigenous to the Americas and were here prior to pre-Columbian contact.